All right, I better do the intro again. Welcome to the Sparked HL7AU eRequesting Technical Design Group meeting for Thursday, the 11th of September. My name is Chris. I'm from Orabox and I'm going to be chairing today. However, mostly you're going to be hearing from Michael Wilson. Firstly, let's start with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We acknowledge the First Peoples as the first scientists, educators and healers. So here's what we're going to get through today, the Thursday, the 11th of September. First of all, we'll just do the approval of meeting minutes from last time and update on action items, of which I think there's only one. And then I'm going to hand over to Michael, and Michael's going to talk about the HL7AU Connectathon and the results of that, an update on where we're at with the ballot for working standard, and then we're going to spend a long time getting into the ballot for working standard reconciliation, which is a big task that we have ahead of us now that we've done the ballot. We've got to reconcile all the issues, and then right at the end we will do a quick discussion on how we are going to handle daylight savings. All right. So let's just pop over to the minutes. All right, so these are the minutes from last meeting, 28th of August. Hope everyone has had a chance to review those if they want to. Would anyone like to propose that we accept those minutes as they are?
I'm happy to do that. Michael Osborne.
Thank you, Michael. And would someone like to second? Anybody? Bueller?
I'll second.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers. All right, so let's launch the poll for that. All right, you should be able to see a poll now. Approval of minutes for previous meeting. If you haven't seen one of these before, just tick affirmative, negative, or abstain.
Mine's in the chat.
Thank you very much. All right. So fairly uncontroversial one. That one, affirmative is 14, abstain is 11, so that one has passed. Thank you very much. All right, so we have one action items from previous meetings, and this was one for you, Michael. Raise a JIRA against AU base for guidance on coverage.payer, which you have marked as complete.
Yep, so that was, we completed another ballot issue about the must supports on our coverage profile. And one of those was payer is mandatory, so we put a must support on it, but there was uncertainty about how we should complete that. Thought that it was probably a something we should refer to by work group, AU base. If you're able to just click on that one, Chris, I'll show you. So this one was created during the ballot period for AU base, so it will be managed as part of their ballot resolution. So this is just talking about that coverage profile and the payer element on that. Make some notes that in R5, payer is replaced by insurer and payment by, and they're both optional. So just making that note. But basically, we've identified that we need some clarification on how to populate coverage payer, particularly for concession and private pay. And that we think that sort of, we want some consistency that's beyond the scope of eRequesting. So it's not just an eRequesting issue there. So we've just requested some guidance or examples on how coverage pay is to be populated for common Australian coverage types in order to remove ambiguity and support consistency. So that's been linked back to our original ballot issue. So this is a ballot issue that will go through the fire work group as part of AU base. And once we get an outcome from that, we can bring that back to the TDG. That one's done.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michael. All right, so we are going to hand over to you now anyway. Report back from the HL7 Connectathon. Did you want to? Do you want to drive or?
Yeah, I'll share.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay, hopefully you're seeing my screen now, are you?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Just move the windows around. Right. I've got too many windows going on here. All right, found the right one. Okay, so reporting back from the Connectathon that we had in Brisbane. So on the 1st and 2nd of September, there was a HL7 Australia Connectathon held in Brisbane, and it was in the Telstra Health building. They gave us a venue, which was great. So in the Connectathon, we had an eRequesting track. Our goals for this track was to enable participants to build an understanding of the eRequesting IG, test implementations against the ballot snapshot. So the snapshot of the FIRE IG that we're currently going through ballot. The ballot was still open at that point in time. So if we were finding any issues, we wanted to raise them so that balloters could consider them as part of the ballot. And then the other one was to contribute to our Australian Fire Maturity Model progression. So that was about collecting test coverage so that we can look to move some of our resources from AFMM level 1, which they all are now, potentially to AFMM 2, if we can get 3 or more independently developed systems testing more than 80% of those artifacts. We had a number of participants from different organisations, including Beta, ConsultMed, CSIRO, Epic, Magentis, Mater, MedSmart, and Sonic. So we had a good turnout for the eRequesting track. There was obviously a lot more organisations there across the other tracks, because there was also a Smart App Launch track and an AU Core patient summary track as well. Some of the notable achievements that we had at the end of our report back, we had a great demo of the Scripty app. So that was our sort of first we've seen of a patient-focused app for eRequesting. So they adapted their Scripty app so that it could display diagnostic requests to patients. They successfully connected to the Magentis, Sonic, and Spark servers in order to do that. And they also demonstrated sort of some of the patient facing focus that might be interesting around how patients could find providers, track their fulfillments. They were trying to work out how groups might work and how to display a group of requests either separately or together. So that was really awesome demonstration they had there. We had Magentis, their eRequesting server enabled that patient access to the Scripty app, as well as talking to Sonic. Beta EMR placed diagnostic requests into the Sonic, and they also had an AidBox server that accepted diagnostic requests from places, fillers, and patient apps. Sonic was an AU eRequesting server and filler, supporting connections with Beta, CSIRO demonstration apps, and Scripty. We had a couple of just demo apps put together by some CSIRO staff, and they were able to create diagnostic requests and query the Sonic AidBox and the Beta and Spark servers. And we also had a couple of people that were new to eRequesting there, so they were using Postman, and they learned how to construct queries and run tests against the Spark and Beta servers. So that was a great opportunity for them to get their hands dirty and start testing eRequesting. We also had, there was a lot of really good breakout sessions actually during this Connectathon. It was hard. You wanted to go to all of them, but you also wanted to be in the room doing connecting. But we had a specific one for eRequesting, and that was on claiming and booking. So we discussed claiming and booking options and challenges to inform the future considerations for eRequesting. So it's not in our scope at the moment, but we know it's something we need to address. So we talked about things about why claiming is needed, the current approaches, the use of SNOMED codes, and how actually uptake in use of SNOMED codes would facilitate claiming. We talked about all the complexities of booking for imaging and the like, about the groups, about claiming particular tests and not others. So whether we have to split groups and a whole heap of complexities around that. And we also sort of floated the concept of a sort of view peak operation. So something that you can have a look at the request before claiming it. Before it was kind of, if you it wasn't assigned to you, then you wouldn't have access to it unless you're doing a claim. But kind of identified the need that there need to be this sort of peak operation where you can have a look and see whether you can claim it, what you can claim out of it, and rather than actually doing the claim. So there are a number of notes from that breakout session. If you're interested to see some of the things we discussed in more detail, which I'll paste in the chat. So, yep, hopefully you can see that. So if you're interested in some of the topics, like we didn't solve all the problems by any means, but we certainly it was a good conversation to discuss some of the things we need to consider. Some of the issues we discovered during the Connectathon, we noticed that the change search examples were missing resource type qualifiers. So it worked on the Spark server, but they didn't work on other servers, and looking that they weren't defined properly. So we actually have raised an issue on that, which is now part of ballot. So we'll be resolving that one as part of ballot to fix our examples. In the IG, there was some initial issues where our code system for task tags moved to AU base, and as part of that process, it was renamed to resource tag rather than task tag. So a couple of implementations had to update that so that they could use the new term, and a couple of SNOMED CT synonyms were found to be missing for some request and reason codes as well. So this is a wonderful diagram of all the connections that were made as part of the Connectathon. This is across all tracks. You can see the popularity and the maturity of the community improving here, how it's really hard to put all these arrows on a page now because there's so many different people, there's so many different organizations and systems connecting to each other. So yeah, we've really seen the maturity of the community come along here at Connectathons, and lots of connecting happening across all different tracks, different organizations, different systems. So I think there's some summary on the side there. We had overall 17 organizations in the room, 92 people. Collection of our test results showed significantly increased adoption of AE Core, patient summary, as well as eRequesting. So we had 4 systems for AE Core, 10 for patient summary, and 8 for eRequesting. So it was extremely successful event. As an outcome of that, we haven't compiled all our test evidence that we've got for the eRequesting testing that happened. We will be doing that over the coming weeks. And when we get an opportunity, probably later on, once we get through some ballot issues about reviewing our AFMM maturity, to see whether we want to up that as part of the testing evidence we've been getting out of these events. There will also be another Connectathon, HL7AU Connectathon in December in Melbourne. I think it's the 9th and 10th of December, but hasn't been released yet. So keep an eye out for those when they come out. You know, these things sell out extremely quickly. So keep an eye out if you're interested in attending that in December. What we'll be looking at for eRequesting at that Connectathon is testing all the changes we've made through ballot. We'll be getting close to publication there, looking for publication in February. So that will be an opportunity to test all the changes we've been making through ballot. Anyone got any questions about Connectathon or any comments? Anyone want to share any experiences? What they like? Happy to move on otherwise. All right, move on. So ballot for working standard update. So this is going to keep us busy now for a while. So the eRequesting ballot for working standard has now, the ballot period has now closed. So that closed on the 7th of September. And we're now moving into this ballot reconciliation. So you can see down the bottom there for the ballot vote, we had 59 that were eligible to vote. We had 9 affirmative votes, 36 negative votes, 3 abstain, and 11 no vote. So that gave us a 20% affirmative vote, which is the affirmative versus negative. The abstains and no votes don't count towards that. So we have 20% affirmative of the total vote count that was affirmative or negative. So what that means is that we're not passing so far. So that approval status, we need a target of 60% affirmative in order to get publication approval for release 1. So we're not there yet, but that doesn't mean we won't get there. So our job now is to go through all those ballot issues that were raised, resolve them, and then we'll go back to the balloters who had voted negative on those and say, have we satisfactorily resolved those issues? If they're happy with that, they'll withdraw their negative vote, they'll turn into affirmative votes, and that will put our percentage up, and with our target of getting to 60%, so that we can publish release 1. I'll just move on to the next one. Ballot issues that were raised, we had 99 in total. So all up, 99 issues. I think that's kind of for the first release of an IG that's expected. It could even be actually lower than we expected. I know AU Core for their first release had about 108. So we're in the ballpark. It's a lot of work for us to do now in the TDG, but it's in the ballpark of what we expected. Of that, we've got 86 change requests and 13 technical corrections. The technical corrections don't need to go through the TDG. They're just minor fixes for the IG. The co-chairs will triage those and resolve those. But the 86 change requests, they all need to go through the TDG. They all need to go to vote. So we're going to be busy working through those over the coming months. And just to give you sort of breakdown of where we're at with that progress, we'll be doing this in every meeting, giving you this progress update of where we're at. So we've got a total of 99 issues. The co-chairs have triaged 19 of those, so 19%. And we've already resolved 9 issues, 9%. So some of those we resolved in the last TDG meeting. Others are technical corrections that have been resolved by the co-chairs. So this will be tracking our progress. The applied on the right there is once the change has actually been made in the IG, and it'll go into the continuous integration build of the IG. We'll start seeing that number tick up too as we go. So this will be our tracking to see how we're progressing and where we get to. So just a reminder on what we're doing now and how we're doing it. So we've been through ballot. Balloters have reviewed the spec. They've raised feedback and voted on it. And so now we're going through the process of the co-chairs triaging. So we've got 2 meetings a week at the moment with the co-chairs. We've got a dedicated triage meeting on Tuesdays, and then we've got a co-chair, our standard co-chair meeting on Thursdays that we'll also be using for triage. So as part of that, we'll propose dispositions, and they're the ones that will be brought to you for vote. So then TDG members will vote on those dispositions. We'll discuss them. You'll vote on them. We can change the dispositions from what the co-chairs originally triaged, but we'll make votes on those. And then, like I said before, at the end of the process, HL7AU will contact balloters to withdraw their votes in Jura. So if they're happy with the way we've resolved the issue, they'll withdraw their vote. Those negatives will turn to affirmatives. And then if confirmed, if the ballot passes, then we'll have the ability to publish release 1. So that's what we're doing. Another thing for each of the issues that we're going through and resolving as part of the ballot, we will identify a disposition and we'll either identify them as considered for future use. So we think it's something that we'd probably like to look at in the future, not part of release 1. So we can move any of them to that resolution, that we will consider them in the future, but not now. It's persuasive that we're happy with the change more or less as it was proposed. Persuasive with modification. We're happy to make a change, but it's not exactly as was requested. We'll make some slight variation to it. Otherwise, not persuasive, so no change will be made to the specification. So we'll indicate why we don't think it's persuasive, why we're not making a change. And then not persuasive with modification, which is we're not making a change related to the issue that was raised, but we may make some other sort of change in the specification, which might be just something to clarify so there's not a misunderstanding on why this was raised. We may identify some as duplicates as well, which we have more than one issue raised for the same issue. We'll resolve one and identify the other one as a duplicate, and issues may get retracted so that the submitter withdrew it before we resolved it. But of all those 99 issues, we need to go through and they all need to be assigned this and technical corrections applied or TDG voting on this disposition. Given we have so many issues, 99, we're not going to be able to go through them, every single one of them in a TDG meeting. I think on average, we get 5. Maybe if we're really lucky, we might get 8 or 10 through a TDG meeting. So we're not going to have time to get through all of our issues in a TDG meeting. So we will look as part of the triaging of the issues is to put some into a block vote. So that's finding issues that are related along a similar theme and putting them together as part of a block. And then we'll put them out as an electronic vote. So they'll be done out of session between TDG meetings. We'll send the TDG an email saying, hey, this electronic vote is available. You'll go onto the Confluence site. You'll need to log in with a HL7 account, but they're free. Anyone can get them. You'll log in, then you can vote on that. So, and there'll be a vote across the whole block. So if there's 5 or 10 issues in that block, the vote would apply across all of them. But there is opportunity if you don't agree that they all should be resolved the same, or you have questions or want one item discussed. You can do a refer to telecon and say, this is the issue that I want referred to telecon. That actually means we'll take it to a TDG meeting. So what we'll do is take that issue out of the block and it will come to a TDG meeting. The rest can remain in the block and be voted on. So we don't have, we haven't triaged enough yet to put together any of these block votes or electronic votes, but they are coming. So keep an eye out for those and yeah, please vote when you see those electronic votes come through. We'll report the results in a TDG meeting, but you will need to vote out of session electronically. All right, before we get into reconciliation, does anyone have any questions about the ballot, where we are, what we need to do? No. Okay. You can ask questions as we go. Happy to take them as we go. So we're going to go through some of the ballot issues now. What we try and do is a week before the, actually, I might just go back first. Just jump to this one. Oh, this particular diagram where we're progressing, there is a Confluence page for our current ballot. So I'll just put that in the chat. This will get updated periodically as we progress, which has the same progression diagram here. But what's also on this page is the votes that are upcoming. So you'll see these votes here have been put on the page saying we're looking at resolving them on the 11th September. So that's today's meeting in this call. So you'll see those here. You'll also see the votes completed. These are ones that we have approved in a previous meeting. So if you want to keep a track of where we're at, what we're doing, what's coming up, then you can have a look at this page. You can click a watch up here, so you'll get notified of any update to this page as we go. So prior to a meeting, a week out, we'll update this page. We'll also send the TDG an email about what's coming up, so you got a chance to review the issues before a meeting. But here we are. These are the ones that have been scheduled for this meeting. We're going to work through them. These were just early ballot issues, so hopefully they're relatively straightforward for us, ease us into it. We will have some curly ones the further we get into this, but hopefully this is a reasonably easy start for us, but we'll see how we go. I'll go to the first issue. I'll post it in the chat so you can have a look there if you want as well. Make the screen a bit bigger. Okay, so this has been raised by Jamie Murdoch, one of our IG authors, and it's talking here about the communication request authored on short is ambiguous and not aligned with element definition. So the element definition short for communication request authored on in that AU eRequesting communication request profile is ambiguous and does not align with communication request resource short and element definition. So I think here what we have in the profile is the date time communication request direction obtained. So that's what we've put in our profile. For the international base communication request, the short is when request transition to being actionable. And for draft requests indicates the date of initial creation. For requests with other statuses indicate the date of activation, noting the alternate name is created on. So in the AUE requesting short doesn't mention activation or being actionable like other core short actions. The AUE requesting short is ambiguous, unclear as referring to the activation date, creation date, date received, or something else. Suggest changing to when the request was activated, or alternatively remove the short and allow the default. A lot of words there. I'll just say here, as part of our triage, we're saying that this is persuasive. Said to remove the AU requesting short communication request authored on. And I think that was it. So let's have a look at this, what this looks like. And sign out eRequesting communication request profile. And there is authored on. And then what we changed it to was the date, time, communication request, direction obtained. And on the parent, the profile is when request transitioned to being actionable. Oh yeah.
Is it typical to put a use case in there that is blocked by this issue?
Sorry, what do you mean?
I mean, there's a statement why this is problematic, but it doesn't actually say in which case it becomes problematic in terms of actions. Like, how would you interact with the system? So this is a problem, and I wonder if that's common. That the requests are phrased like this. You should change it, but the question is, what can I not do if this is not changed?
So all it's saying is that I think we may have Jamie on the call here, but just jump back to it. The key thing here is that our short doesn't necessarily improve what was already there, right? So by leaving it as the default may be more useful. I think the other point here is that if we look at the communication request profile, there is a status here, and it can be draft or active or on hold, entered in error, unknown. So I think the base definition is kind of dealing with that draft, right? It might be in draft, might go through multiple states of draft, and then be made active. And so the authored on is when the request transitions to be actionable. So it's no longer draft, it's now active. And so therefore, this is when it was authored. It may have gone through multiple authored states.
Yeah, so the explanation that you just gave, if it's not like that, then the following problem could occur. That was basically what I was expecting to see in the ticket. Something that says, if we don't change this, then this will happen.
So yeah, there's not, I mean, this is a display label, right? So if you have a look on the, back to it, authored on, have a look at it in here. Authored on, yeah, there's no additional details, but it's just the short display. It's just the display label for the short label for the element. That's all it is. So I think what Jamie's indicated here is that we're potentially creating more ambiguity by changing it, and we're probably best just to leave it the way it is in the international spec.
They're just arguing that unless you're actually adding value to your profiles, there's no reason to override the international default description.
It will confuse. This can confuse if you do that.
Yeah.
That's the argument in one line. Okay, that was what I was looking for. Why
Yeah.
why do you want to change? Because it confuses.
Yeah. It doesn't make things doesn't improve it, then we probably shouldn't change.
Doesn't make it clearer. Like why over, because in an authoring sense, it means now we're forever like managing this description when really we just use the base one, unless we really have a semantic reason why our description is different.
I was not particularly looking at this case. I was just wondering if the change requests are generally written in a way that has, if we don't, like, here's the scenario. So if a user of this guide reads it, they will be confused because it's not standard, and then they'll spend time unnecessarily. Hence, we should change it. So I was looking for the case, for the problem case description, and I was wondering if they're all like this.
Well, it's up to the individuals. These are ballot issues. Whoever the individual raised the issue, they could just say, I don't like this, looks dumb, right? And it's up to us to work out what do we do with it. So yeah, it's entirely up to the author of the issue how they authored it. So we've got that's part of our triage, is trying to work out, well, what do they mean? What are they getting at? What do we think it's persuasive or not? So I think that was the position we sort of came to here, was that we think it's probably persuasive, just remove it. We're not adding any value. We're not making it any clearer. Let's just remove it.
Feels like I'm throwing a large spanner. I think we should move on. We've got 99.
Okay. Well, given I'm not chair this time, I can actually motion this. So I'd like to motion that we accept this disposition as persuasive and remove the eRequesting short for communication request authored on.
I'll second that, Dave McKillop.
Chris, are you able to launch a poll?
Sorry, I've just lost.
Once you find the button.
Yep. Okay. All right. So we're going to run a motion, run a vote for that motion. If you would like to accept the motion from Michael, please tick affirmative, negative, or abstain.
As a co-host, I can't vote in the poll, so I've just put it in the chat. Plus affirmative, plus one affirmative.
Who's taking notes today?
Michael Osborne.
Brilliant. Thanks, Michael. All right, we're at 85%. We're going to wrap this one up in 3, 2, 1. Right, and that one has been passed. Affirmative 25, abstain 7. Sorry, affirmative 26, abstain 7.
Okay. So up to the next one. Similar one. Got a theme going here. what would we'd probably do in the future, ones like this that are relatively straightforward, they'll probably go to an eVote. Given that it was early on in triage, we didn't have the more meaty ones to bring to the TDG yet. So we would have probably bundled these into a block vote. But given it's very early on in triage, we brought them here, and gives you the opportunity to discuss and see how we're doing this as well. Okay, so this one I'll put in the chat so you can read it yourself. So this one again is remove the short from service request code in the AU eRequesting imaging request and pathology request. So we have agreed on some profile specific implementation guidance for the population of service request code and included the additional text of the element definition short and comment to refer to this guidance. So this is saying it's an inappropriate use of the element definition short, which is defined as a concise description of what this element means. So the suggestion here is to remove short, refer to profile specific implementation guidance. And the element definition comment, which is defined as an explanatory note and the implementation guidance about the element, including notes about how to use the data properly, also refers and links to profile specific guidance. This link is invalid if profiles is accessed by a downloaded package, as implementation guidance is not included in the package. So suggest current comment with link to refer to profile implementation guidance is replaced with the relevant profile specific implementation guidance text to ensure guidance and accessibility regardless of how the profile is accessed. Yeah, a lot of words there, but I'll show you. So let's have a look at imaging request first. So we have at the top here this profile specific implementation guidance on service request code. And it talks about how we should use apply the code to the service request. So it talks here about there's a preference of order here that we should use the Randscar radiology referral value set as the preferred option. If you can't use that, select a code from the SNOMED CT imaging procedure value set. If you can't use that, you can use a local code, preferably from a published and accessible via code system. Can't use that, free text is the least preferred option, which should not be used if local code. So, and we've got a diagram that goes with it and a bit of extra text here. So this is the profile specific guidance. You'll see here in our short for code, refer to the profile specific implementation guidance on service request code. So that text there. And I think if we look at this detail as well, you'll see here the short is refer to the profile specific implementation guidance, and the comments is the same, but the link actually works. So that's the only difference there. And so the proposal is to actually put the text in there, because one of the things is that the comment that was made is if you download the package, you have the profile, having this doesn't help you, the guidance isn't there. So we actually should apply a particular short there. So let's have a look at what the proposal is here. So we'll triage this as persuasive with modification. So the proposal here is to remove the element definition short from service request code in the imaging request and pathology request profiles. So it's inherited, and it will be inherited from the international service request, which is what is being requested ordered, which is the definition of short. And then we'll put in the comment the following profile specific guidance. The place the system for the imaging request shall adhere to this preference with 1, 2, 3, 4. For a pathology request, the place system shall adhere to the following order of preference. So what that would look like is here, this short will change to the inherited one, which is what is being requested, ordered. And then in the comments, which the only problem with this is if you are looking at through the user interface, you have to click on the code to go then review the comments. This comment here would be replaced with the appropriate full text here. rather than referring to the guidance that's on a page that you may not be in the context of when you're looking at this. So it does mean when you're viewing the profile, you don't have that indication. Sorry, jumping around a bit here because it's just a short here. You don't realize that you have to click on code to go see more detail on it. But having said that, this profile guidance is only a mouse scroll up above it. So it's not, it's all part of the same page. There you go.
Is there a risk of the documentation splitting? So could we be maintaining documentation in one place and it falls behind in the other?
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is a maintenance problem for the IG authors where they update the text here. They also have to update it in that profile specific guidance. Sorry, in the element comment as well. So they do have to maintain it in two places. But the counter argument to that is this content, when you download the package, isn't available to you. It's not in the package. And if you're looking at the element definition, you won't have that text.
Did you just download the package?
What do you mean it's not in the package? It's in the HTML, the package. Like, are you saying it's not in the profiles?
Yeah, it's not in the profiles, yeah. So if you upload those profiles into a server or something.
Okay, well, I think if it's a URI, that will never change. So it's a versioned URL and the server is reliable. Having a URL is not the biggest problem, given that the assumption is that you just downloaded the package. So that means you are connected to the internet, which makes the resource available to you. So I think the danger is greater from having two sources to maintain.
I think the other side of this argument is that for the short, particularly, that it doesn't abide with the conventions of what a short is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a short. I think that was in the comment here. Let's see. We're saying inappropriate use of the short, which is defined as a concise description of what the element means. So there's that argument there saying that the short shouldn't be that. The second argument is about, well, the element comment is supposed to be explanatory notes and implementation guidance. So rather than linking out.
But it bundles to tickets. It makes a ticket against short and it makes a ticket to change
Yeah,
comment.
Yeah. So, but we can say, like, as part of this, we can say, like, currently the triage is that we will remove the short and we will put this content in here. If we want, we can change that to say, do something different with the comment. So
is there anything additional in the comment that is not in the top of the page?
no, it's a copy, it's exact copy.
I think it's a valid point. I think replicating it, I don't see the benefit. I think it's always problematic to load up additional commentary behind those links because most people don't follow through with that. But that seems to be that's an independent issue. I think the biggest thing is that duplication is, you know, the argument here is that those comments as described are to provide that additional commentary. But if that commentary guidance is already provided somewhere else, it doesn't seem like it's adding any value.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the option we've got here. What we can do is we can say that we are going to remove the short and default back to the inherited one, but leave the comment as is, which is, this is what it is now, which is refer the profile specific implementation guidelines service request code. And Jamie, this is your ticket. That's very, did you talk to it?
The only risk, sorry, not a risk, it's an issue, is that the link as is like an internal reference as it stands to the profile specific implementation guidance. So again, if you're accessing it from the package, I don't think that will work. So it needs to be linked to like a full versioned URL or like to the
Needs
CI
to be an absolute
build.
URI. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess it's deciding where that goes if we don't want to replicate or where it's linking to if we don't want to replicate. And Brett, I see you've got your hand up. You probably have an answer to that.
Oh, no, I think that's actually a really good point because it just turns into a maintenance problem because you need to move it with each version that you publish if you want to refer to the latest piece of profile-specific implementation guidance. So it's kind of fine here because you're inside the full URL, but not if it's taken out as an independent artifact.
So as it stands though, won't that link not work when the package is downloaded?
Yeah.
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 So
If it's relative, it won't work at all. But even if you made it version specific, when you release 2, you'll have to update it. If you want to, otherwise you're pointing at the old version of the guidance. It may not have changed, but it may have.
You have to put it in the build. It has to become a full URL in the release.
Yeah, that's why we kind of avoid it mainly in other specs.
Would it be right that it always points to the latest, even if it's old? Is that possible? Like, because isn't the latest profile always a known URL? It doesn't change.
Yeah, you could do that. You could do like the current version, but then all the old versions will point to the current version.
It would mean all the old, the 5-year-old one points to the latest advice. But isn't that?
Yeah, that's probably better. Yeah, no, that's better. If you want to do that, just put it at the canonical. Like there's nothing there at the moment.
Well, I think that's probably like, because you're pulling down a versioned artifact, your documentation should be consistent with your artifact version. I would totally expect that. If it would send me to something else, then I would be really surprised.
Yeah.
So that's
it just turns into a maintenance thing because like are you going to do it for every snapshot or not? And so you just got
you have to use a variable that comes in with a build. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You have to have the URL in a variable, and the variable has to be injected at that location.
We're now talking about like the international publishing process.
Yeah, just wanted to add, is it a real life use case when somebody would like to implement 5 years old eRequesting specification? I think in theory, yeah, it's good to have all the thing consistent, but do we really need it? Will somebody use it this way? So maybe just skip and use this. Always link to latest.
So I think there's two. So we've got two counter arguments here. One is we will duplicate the text, and then it'll always be consistent. Well, as long as the IG authors maintain it. Given this was raised by one, I assume that they're comfortable doing that. But the alternative is that we try and provide a link solution, which is either to the latest, or probably that would be the answer. That seems to be where we landed, to the latest. One is consistent as long as it's updated when the text is updated in the IG. The other one will be out of sync between versions. So I don't know if we have. Are
you gonna remember to do that? Like it's like a job. It's the thing you have to do, right?
To update the text, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Update the link, yeah. If we're gonna.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, we can probably do what pragmatically. We can link to the latest and then say this links you to the latest version. There may be difference to the one that you're viewing.
Does that fit purpose then?
And you're assuming that things are going to stay where they are in the spec as well, because like if it changes location or something, you're going to have to, like, say you change the profile name.
Well, that's the idea of a URI, that wherever you have your URI, that's the stable location.
Oh, so you're going to redirect it to the right location.
I would assume that
Well, you'll have to run that by the HL7 technical lead, but putting redirects in.
Who's that, Brett?
Yep.
I feel the safest option is we just duplicate the text in there. It's a relatively simple solution that, yes, it may become a problem if it starts to get out of sync. We can look at changing it later or as the guidance changes. But we're going to update it now in this release. It will be consistent if we're comfortable with that.
I think that's a bad solution because we're basically, why do we have it in the service request in the first place? If you think it's more appropriate to put it with the code, then have it in the code and having it in the introduction to that profile seems just kind of, it's a weird duplication. It's not like they're in two completely different parts of the specification. They're actually in the same part of the specification, and yet we've decided we want to say the same thing twice. Like, it just seems
is the alternative we say nothing in the comment?
That's what I would do. I would just put both away. One, because there's no reason to override, and the comment, there isn't really any comment here because it's consistent with what we said above.
Mate, I don't know, Chris, could you do a poll on the fly? What we can do just before so we don't have a motion that we just put up and then fail and fail.
Do we in words say go and look at the profiles? We don't link to it, but we kind of like say go look at it. I don't know.
With no link.
It's just going to cause more confusion. I don't know.
Well, you've already come through that to get here anyway.
You're assuming people read everything.
Let's
it's at the top of the page, and as you start scrolling down, they're going, oh, I wonder
let's
what
try
this
and do a
is about.
poll with three options. One is that we put the text in. The second one, we use a URL to the current version. And the third one is we say refer to the guidance with no link.
Is there another option to just remove it completely?
Oh, sorry. Yes. I thought that was if we, there is definitely remove it.
Okay, hang on.
Put you under pressure.
On the fly.
We can revert to raise hands if we need to.
Make sure the options are mutually exclusive.
And you can't vote twice because Andy will abuse it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and you better make sure you add abstain.
Oh,
That always happens.
Abstain.
Every time there's options.
Prefer not to respond.
Okay, all right, here we go.
I put mine in the chat.
I don't think I've ever had a poll with this many options.
There we have a dead heat. It's
exciting. Give me quick.
Yeah, it's going to spread the numbers out.
Yeah.
I think abstain might win.
Go with that. Just do nothing.
There's a couple of people who haven't voted. I'll give you a couple more minutes or a couple more seconds.
Is there an option? I'm confused.
Let's call abstain.
Let's call abstain. Yeah, exactly, Angus.
It's the Michael Osborne option.
All right, we'll wrap that one up. 3, 2, 1. There you go.
Remove completely.
Remove completely.
Well, I'm happy based on that. I'll make a motion that we remove the element short and the element definition short and the element definition comment from service request code in the eRequesting imaging and pathology profiles.
So remove completely is going to mean what? There's nothing.
So we just get the inherited
description.
Yeah.
Inherited.
Yeah.
I second.
Which will be.
So yeah, the international one is what is being requested / ordered is the short, and there'll be no comment.
Yeah, okay. We won't get the inherited international comment. We'll get no comment.
Oh, sorry. What was the international comment? I didn't think there.
I think
We're
there
doing
would be
service
one.
request code, aren't we? Isn't
Yeah.
it many laboratory and radiology procedure codes embed the specimen organ system and the test order name, for
What we
example,
did,
serum
yeah.
and serum plasma glucose, or a chest X-ray. The specimen might not be recorded separately from the test code.
Okay. So that
We
is
don't
what.
use specimen.
Yeah. So maybe that. Where are we? So I'm just trying to get to the code. Yeah.
Yeah.
Code that identifies particular service.
Yeah, I was in the camp that the comment should say, "Go, please review the profiles guidance," without a link.
Does that change our opinion now we've looked at that? Let's have a look at. This is AU-based service request, I think. That's what it will say. Yeah, AU-based service request. So that's what we'll inherit. Okay, so let's have a look at this again now. Code, that's what we'll inherit.
So this is what they'll see. The short's fine, and the definition. Just the comments difficult.
Jamie, do you have a suggestion on
I don't
a
even know why
comment?
that comment's in international. It's not a very good comment.
Yes. What about having one that says, please observe the order of preferences as defined in the guide above, which is basically what it says. It doesn't say how to do it in full detail.
Yeah.
It's not a replication. So irrespective of how the standard evolves, you would still want them to observe the order of preference, whatever that may be. We will assume that we will always have an order of preference. So that should be stable across the versions of this standard. So then the comment is essentially version independent.
Yeah. Okay, hang on. Where did that what is being requested ordered come from?
It's actually from base. I mean, it's from
Is
the
it?
base file. It's not from AU eRequesting. So eRequesting just passes it through. So he doesn't have anything to say on this either. It is kind of weird that it's very specific to diagnostics, but you can use service requests for all sorts of other things. So I'm quite happy to override it. If you want to change that, I'm happy to motion that we put a description in there, which is simply referring to the enclosing profile for guidance, or the guidance or something, without any references, just as text, purely to override that.
And still remove the short and just leave the comment.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Okay. So that was your motion, was it?
Yep. In a long-winded way that's very imprecise.
Michael, there's just a comment from Dan saying these could lead to non-compliance. Do we want to discuss that a bit further?
That's referring to the base fire R4 description there.
Which will override now then, yep.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion from Andy. Andy, would you like to repeat your motion, please?
The motion is to fill in the comment within our profile to say something like refer to the enclosing profile for guidance on code selection or code specification.
Okay. Does anyone want to second that?
Can I just adjust so we also will remove the short as part of that? So.
Do we want to slightly change that to the profile specific guidance so that we know exactly where to look?
Yeah, the only thing about this is the is this in the abstract or is it in the imaging?
No, it's in image. It's in imaging and in pathology. So we've got. So this was raised against those two. So just looking at what we had here as a resolution, remove the element definition short from service request code in the eRequesting imaging request and pathology request profiles. So it is inherited. Like that text is not correct, but just so it is inherited. And then change the element definition comment to the following, right? Which would be, there was one here for imaging and one here for pathology, but I think you're proposing some generic text that could be used in both of those, but it would still be in the.
No, I'm happy for it to be specific to the imaging and pathology profiles, because I think it does make sense to refer to the guidance provided by RANSCAR or RCPA.
You know what? Let's do this to make it easier on everyone when we actually do this. So we'll leave the remove element short. Change the element definition comments for following profile. So something like refer to the
Apps log is not your friend.
And to the requesting for, what are we going to say?
Or service request code.
Or service.
The correct casing.
Dot code guidance.
You've said guidance already.
For usage. Is that
just full stop? But yeah.
Yep, Jamie, does that satisfy?
And then get rid of all that. Yeah.
Get rid of all that.
I mean, it references to the correct location. I don't agree, but that is okay. I just think there's a risk. I think there's a risk of referring to guidance when we're not linking to it. And I agree, like linking to it is problematic, but we're referring to something and assuming someone will be able to find it.
Well, at least they need to know they need to look for it.
But this is the clutch you're in, right? Because we'd love to link to it, but we've just gone through whole scenarios of why we can't.
Yeah.
And it's so closely aligned in the pathway they would have got here anyway. So it's not like you're telling them to go somewhere completely different in the spec.
Yeah.
So it is inherited.
You still have a spelling mistake in service request.
It's just that developer finally needing to read the manual at the end of the day.
Yeah, can we put RTFM at the end of it?
Yeah, because like if you're just looking at the profile, it's harder. Yeah.
Is this a common problem? Because it's basically an issue of the build system.
This is the only reason we're even talking about this is because we have very specific profile guidance here for this. This is one of the key parts for code selection. Like it's
nothing unique. Like what we're creating implementation guide. We have specific guidance for an element.
Oh yeah, but it's one of those really important things that we're trying to portray here. But because we haven't tried to do this anywhere else, right? Have something like this. So.
But it's also overarchingly important to the whole service request and the meaning of the whole service request. So it is appropriate to have that guidance up front in the introduction to service request, which is what we have. And then once you get down to the very specific code guidance, I think this is fine.
Okay. So Andy, does this portray your motion?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Chris, do you want to find a second?
I'll second.
There we go.
Sorry, I thought you were still writing it up. Okay. I'm bringing up a poll for that.
I will just propose that, so it's in the ticket. So that's what we have. We have it as persuasive with modification, and that's what we've proposed here in the resolution. I've put a +1 affirmative in the chat.
All right, we'll wrap that one up in 3, 2, 1. And the results are 22 affirmative, 1 negative, and 8 abstained. That one is passed.
Okay. And that one was good conversation. Let's have a look at the next one, use cases. Go in the chat. Remove use cases from eRequesting communication request patient profile description. So the eRequest communication request profile description contains use case information should be removed. Following should be removed from description and captured under usage scenarios. So it supports use cases. I'll show you in a second that. Remove supported communication mediums, including SMS and email from the description, as this is indicated in the profile definition. Okay. So got too many here. Let's go to eRequesting. And which one was it? Patient. So communication request patient profile. And sorry, this is at the top here. So we have this profile description here, sets minimum expectations, blah, 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 blah. And then here it supports use cases where diagnostic provider may communicate with a patient, suggest a booking, also supports requests for communication not to be performed. I've got all that. And not too much here. Supported communication mediums include SMS and email. So I think it's this whole section here, that bit there, that word. So that's about use cases and also talks about the supported communication mediums. For the communication mediums, you'll see that's defined in here. We have a medium, and then we have an eRequesting communication request patient medium, which talks about the types. So the suggestion here is that we don't need to provide that in the description about supported communication mediums because that may change, and that's referenced inside the profile itself from our binding. But this description here is not part of the description, but becomes part of the usage scenarios. So the triage of this is persuasive with modification. So remove the usage guidance from the profile description, so that bit we just talked about, and then add a usage scenario section to the profile with SMS and email scenarios for booking an appointment, providing instructions for diagnostic test and requests for communications not to be performed. So that's not saying the exact text, that's just saying what those usage scenarios would cover, that we've got currently 3 different types of usage scenarios we've identified, which is booking the appointment, providing instructions, and requesting communication not to be performed. So that would just go. So we have it on other profiles. This just becomes a usage section, which is it that same one there, Jamie? Does it go in this section?
No, if you go to my health record consent withdrawal, there's a usage scenarios one in there.
Usage scenarios. Okay, so we just have. So it's just pulling it out of the description, making it clearer in usage scenarios about how it might be used. Any concerns about that? Okay. Well, okay.
My only concern with it is that if someone is reading this, it makes it very obtuse in terms of, say, for instance, the SMS and email scenarios, because you actually really need to dig down to discover the intent in it. So it's not very friendly in terms of seeing this and understanding what the implication is, because not everyone's going to, I think, be familiar with how FHIR represents different mediums and like medium hierarchies and all that kind of stuff.
This is still proposing. We're still so we're going to add usage scenarios section with SMS and email scenarios for booking an appointment, providing instructions. So we'll still talk about SMS and email, right? It'll just be in the context of usage scenarios, right? So it won't abstract and say, it'll still talk about SMS and email. It just dropped this text here. The supported mediums include that, but it will just turn it into usage scenarios, which might be the patient being contacted by SMS or email in a usage scenario context, as opposed to this is what's supported by the profile.
Do not have the text as yet. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this is leaving some
room as to what that text
is. But it's basically going to portray what we have above in usage scenarios for SMS and email scenarios for booking an appointment, providing instructions for a diagnostic test and request for communication not to be performed, which is what is said in here. The provider may communicate with the patient, for example, to suggest booking an appointment or to provide instructions or for a diagnostic test. It also supports requests for communication not to be performed. So it's basically the same thing, just restructured in a usage scenario format. Just taking it out of the description, putting it in usage scenarios, and then it's more of a structural thing for the.
We're not actually voting on what that text will say. We're just voting on that the intent of that text will move.
That's right. So if we're comfortable with that, we can accept this. If we're not comfortable with this and want to know the exact text that's going in, well, we can go away and come back with some draft text for that. I think the intent's reasonably clear there. And I think the text will still portray the intent here. That's the point in this. We're saying the intent that we want in this ticket. So I'm happy to motion that we accept this resolution. But if there's no second or we vote this down, that's fine. We'll take it away and have another crack at it.
I'll second it.
I'll second it. It's me.
Okay, thanks very much. We shall run a vote on that.
+1 in the chat.
All right, there is a poll up on your screen. Just click on that. We'll wrap that one up in 3, 2, 1. And that one is passed. 20 affirmative and 9 abstained.
Okay.
We have 13 minutes remaining.
Yep. Brett, are you still on the call?
Yep.
The next one I think was yours about healthcare service. We might time box that one. We need 5 minutes at the end just to do the work out daylight saving. But we'll see if we can get through this. Do you want to talk to this one if you remember? Hang on, the title was Communication Request Standard Data Type should include healthcare service.
Yeah, because I believe in your profile.
You want me to bring it up?
Yep. It's constrained down to just organization.
What was it? It was the sender?
Sender?
Sorry, just check.
When I think about it, recipient.
Sender. Yeah, so sender.
when
So
I think
we're
about it, recipients got the
constrained.
same problem.
Yeah.
But we won't say that. Yeah, so if you check the communication request resource possibilities, it does include healthcare service.
So it's got healthcare
So
service.
yeah, actually, I think recipients are a bigger problem. But anyway, the yeah, so it was more just like we kind of I believe, like if you're looking at current secure messaging systems, they use healthcare service as the primary endpoint locator mechanism, and we have yet to know what Health Connect's going to do. So it was just to relax that to include healthcare service as well as organisation. So, and AU Core would be the go.
Is what you're saying though that the recipient should also have it in there?
I should have. Yeah, in
Well,
fact, that's probably more important. But
we can potentially cover that off here if there's no contention over it. That we update sender and receiver to include healthcare service.
Yeah, and I kind of understand. Yeah, I'm just not sure you need to restrict it to organisation for any reason or not. So it's more just how do you do your directories, which you don't do, but I think that would be a concern for me.
So what we had here is persuasive modification but this is actually proposing rather than AU Core because we've already got another ticket where we're creating eRequesting profiles.
Yep.
So the resolution here was to create an AU eRequesting healthcare service profile derived from AU Core, apply our default obligations, which is something we'd agreed earlier to make this easier. We've got this page which has all of our default obligations. I don't think we need anything special on this to must support elements because we're taking it from AU Core. AU Core has identified some must support elements on it. We would apply their requesting default obligations and then update eRequesting communication profile to allow eRequesting healthcare service in communication request sender. Did you want to suggest, Brett, that becomes sender and recipient?
Yeah, I would like to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to mean to derail this too much, but is there any, I guess, recorded notes on why it was changed to this to start with?
I think I can't remember exactly offhand, but I think just looking at it that we have been using organization in the owner, I think, and we constrain it down. I just don't think we had identified any other use case other than organization. But I think the argument here is that organization is too broad. Brett, you can probably portray it better.
Because I think it's just coming from the provider directory discussions that I've been involved with in the past. They decided healthcare service would be the primary endpoint location mechanism, and that's attached to organizations by default. It's just that they had cases where there were healthcare service provision sites and destinations that were not weren't necessarily individual organizations. So it's so that was just to be able to because it swings into like a directory question because you have to know how to direct these messages. So I assume you're going to send a report back somehow, right?
Yeah. At the time, there was no AU Core healthcare service either. So this has now been introduced to AU Core, and that's it there. So there's everything except name is optional. So you have to provide a name, but everything else is optional with identifier, type, and telecom.
Yeah, and I expect at some point you'll get a Health Connect. You need to have HPO or something, right, to be able to connect to another system to send a message via Health Connect, whatever that is, right? But like say, if you were using secure messaging now, you'd need some kind of identifier to be able to locate that healthcare service anyway. Because I guess, when you get stuff, Angus, how do you know? You used to have like provider number and stuff like that, don't you?
We're all provider number. Yeah, everything provider, or our local codes, which I'm not going to push here, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's more the practitioner role business at that point. But
my worry in doing this is that I don't think we've really thought through the implications and the constraint on healthcare service as it then relates to the contractual relationship between the parties. I think kind of layering this onto only the communication request, I don't understand how that overlays with other options, because what I don't want to do is end up because it's unclear to me what this means. So someone says, oh, I want to use secure messaging for e-requesting. You go, well, that's not even part of this model. And then we're saying, well, we're going to use e-requesting for communication. So I'm going to start specifying a health care service for communication, and a healthcare service may then be unrelated to an organization. But that just seems to be a disconnected model.
You're definitely going to be returning reports by secure messaging for a while.
I don't know. We're not doing it now.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't just opt out of that. The millions of messages coming each month. So it's more just like it needs to feed into the directory system of those as well.
The mapping to the secure messaging is not something we create the obligation here for. We simply say, so if you're doing a copy to, I want to go to this practitioner. How you decide to get it there, it's up to you. Like
we haven't individual started points, but not for organizational delivery. I don't know if you do, like they've got that in scope. So if you just want to deliver it, it's more recipient that I'm thinking about, because it's like say I want to deliver it to a service instead of an individual.
Yeah, I just think I worry that adding that now opens up a whole bunch of things that we haven't thought of the implications of doing that. What does it mean to deliver to a service? This is then presupposing a whole bunch of Health Connect stuff that we have no idea what's happening with it. We have no idea what's going to happen with directed messaging. We have no idea whether secure messaging in theory is even going to exist. Like, how is that actually going to occur? And then I don't know if we've got enough information to make that. So if we open up and add it now, then I don't know how we would implement it. And especially if you start putting, for instance, obligations on you must support healthcare services. I don't know then I don't know if we have even an understanding what the delivery information is.
You can't. Yeah. Like it's because it's I like if you like it's definitely an e-referral problem like this, because you do talk service level stuff a lot, and it's I guess with pathology and diagnostics it's going back to an individual, which is pretty clear. But then again, even your copy twos, don't you direct copy twos to services at some point?
Yeah, but we don't get how we do that from the order, right? So at worst, they're going to write copy to the Brown Street organization, right? Yeah. Like, what does that mean? And there's a human stepping in going, oh, I know what that means. And they're picking that out of our doctor table as the appropriate copy to, and then that is pre-configured knowledge. Oh, this is how we get it to them. They like their stuff faxed to them.
I'm assuming somebody's populating these requests from a directory, right? That they have, right? So it's like if right now I can go to HealthLink and look up services, and that would be where I want to send the message. I want you to send the results. And they use healthcare service.
I mean, yeah, that's possible. We don't use HealthLink, right? You'd say that.
No,
but
but this is just formatting what you put in the request.
In
like
what goes in.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant that they
So
say
it does hook into their reporting system, right? So because that's the identity they can use to look up their endpoints for the destination for the report that's coming back. So that was the rationale anyway. So I mean, you can
there's two
you can push it
sides
off.
here. We take it as defined here in AU Core now and incorporate it, or we do a consider for future use, which is Andy's point about we may not be ready for this yet, and we don't disagree, but we might not be ready for it yet. So I think they're the two sides.
I mean, worst case with this, we just get a name, right? So someone goes, here's a, deliver to Fred. You go, I've no idea what that means. Like, I don't even, we don't know how to look it up. We don't know. And it would then, now when we go, deliver to an organization must have a set of identifiers to look it up. And we kind of thought through that model. I'm not.
But it doesn't say that in the spec though.
I might have to jump in here. I don't think we're going to get this. We have to just quickly do a little vote. Michael, maybe you could bring your screen on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe we'll carry this one over to the next meeting. Brett, you able to attend the next meeting, and we'll continue that one. Okay.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's more just decide. Like, if there's some kind of pathway, I'd be happy. But it's like I'm very sure it's going to be relevant.
Well, I think it'll either be we accept it or we consider it for future use. I think that'll be the decision we'll need to make.
Cool.
Yep. So the next meeting we've got on 25th, we'll continue ballot reconciliation. We're going to be doing that for the rest of the year. So that's the theme there. But on the 5th of October, there is a daylight savings change. So not for next meeting, but the meeting after that, on the 9th of October, there will be daylight saving will be in play. So the times will change on 5th of October for ACT, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and Tas. So the current meeting times 11 to 12:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. So we're currently on Brisbane time. So we can either change that to Australian Daylight Saving Time, which will mean that the meeting will stay at 11 o'clock for ACT, New South Wales, Vic, and Tas. Or we remain on Australian Eastern Standard Time, which means it'll move to 12 o'clock for ACT, New South Wales, Victoria, and Tas. But we'll remain at 11 o'clock for Queensland. And now I've tried to put all the others in there. I hope I got all those right. But I think we're going to launch a poll here to decide on where we move this meeting.
We are indeed. All right. Could you please put in your vote for what time you would like the meeting to be after daylight saving starts in the eastern states?
Show where we all live, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's who's got the most.
There's a good Queensland representation here, I think.
That sounds fair, though. Most people.
So haven't we done this before?
We do it.
We do it every
year ago.
But if we go,
we'll just have two
daylight
meetings,
savings times, we'll be won't be happening during our lunch hour.
All right, wrapping this one up then. 3, 2, 1. And I'm afraid it's not particularly conclusive.
If you didn't vote, you're missing out there.
You've also got a mistake in the Queensland time anyway, because you said it's actually a meeting that's going to take like 13.5 hours.
Oh, yeah. We'll probably need that to get through our 89 issues. Yeah, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was deliberate.
A couple of days.
I'll just say that for WA time, I mean, 8 o'clock's before we start work. I have the same problem with the infrastructure meeting. I can't attend. I don't attend that one because it's just too early. So they're impractical at that time.
Right,
but, yeah.
that decides it.
I mean,
we can't leave our WA.
I would have voted for AEST personally, which makes it a dead heat.
Yeah. and we have historically remained on Australian Standard Time, but maybe we'll revisit again the next meeting. We won't take it. I haven't sent out the meeting invites for the future thing. So maybe we'll call this one a draw and we'll do it again the next meeting.
Demand a
How's that
recount.
work? Yeah.
Are there other options to go later in the day?
We certainly could change the time slot. We've just always been at 11 o'clock. So this would have made no change for some people. But there
And you
are
also
options.
just move by an hour. You could go half an hour. There's different ways to go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's revisit in the next meeting. Call that a draw and revisit in the next meeting.